Listen to this. Scientists can actually switch off the thinking part of your brain completely, and yet you will still finish your habit perfectly. Seriously, there is zero decision-making required, absolutely no willpower, and not a single conscious thought needed. I know, that sounds like pure science fiction, but it is exactly what happens every single time you check your phone without realizing it, or reach for that mid-afternoon sugar hit, or bite your nails. Your brain has essentially built a version of you that just runs without you. That is the autopilot brain, the neuroscience of habit loops. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the exact biological machinery that makes this happen, and by the end, you'll know exactly how to rewire it.
But first, let's be real for a second. We've all been there, right? You decide you're finally going to break a bad habit. You summon all your willpower, you gather your motivation, you swear that this time, starting on a Monday with a fresh New Year's resolution, things will be different. And it works perfectly, until about Thursday morning. Then you find yourself right back where you started, feeling completely defeated. But here's what you need to remember. That is not a discipline problem. That's a biology problem. You are not weak, and it is absolutely not your fault.
Okay, let's dive into this. To understand why we fail, we actually have to look geographically at where these deeply wired habits live inside our heads. Because once a habit is fully wired in, it doesn't live in the part of you that makes rational decisions anymore. It gets pushed way down into a much deeper, older part of the brain. And here is the harsh truth about that deeper area. It doesn't care about your goals, it doesn't care about your motivation, and it certainly doesn't care about your vision board. If you've ever felt like you were literally fighting yourself to change a behavior, well, you were. What's happening is a literal biological handoff taking place inside your skull. When you try something new, your thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, is grinding the gears, working overtime. It handles the planning, the focus, the conscious decision-making. That's exactly why learning to drive or navigating your first day at a new gym feels completely exhausting. Your brain is burning massive amounts of energy. But your brain actually hates burning energy. It wants to be as efficient as possible. So every time you repeat an action, control quietly shifts away from the prefrontal cortex and hands the steering wheel over to the basal ganglia. That's your autopilot brain. Once the basal ganglia takes over, the whole behavior becomes a subconscious routine, just to save energy. This process of locking in a routine relies entirely on neuroplasticity. And honestly, the best way to visualize this is to imagine walking through a field of really tall grass. The very first time you walk across that field, it's tough. You have to push the grass aside, you're stepping carefully, and when you look back, the path is barely visible. But if you walk that exact same line 100 times, the grass gets permanently flattened. It becomes a smooth, clear highway. Well, your brain's neural pathways work the exact same way. Repetition flattens the grass until the behavior becomes completely effortless. Now, for the basal ganglia to actually learn this, the handoff relies on a really precise three-part structure called the habit loop. Step 1 is the cue. That's the trigger. It could be a specific time of day, a location, an emotional feeling, or even just being around a certain person. Step 2 is the routine. That's the actual behavior itself. And step 3 is the reward. This is the chemical payoff that sends a signal zooming back to your brain saying, hey, that was totally worth it. Let's make sure we do that again next time. So when we talk about that chemical signal, we absolutely have to talk about dopamine. And we need to correct a massive misconception right here, right now. You probably think dopamine is just the feel-good chemical, right? The thing that rewards you when you eat chocolate or win a video game. Actually, scratch that. That is not quite it. Dopamine is a teacher, not a reward. I really want you to sit with that for a second. Dopamine actually fires when your brain is surprised, like when a result is way better than expected. That chemical spike is exactly what teaches your brain to remember the sequence of events and wire it directly into the basal ganglia. And this brilliantly illustrates what creates that magnetic pull, making a habit so completely automatic. Think about how dopamine shifts over time. In the very beginning, the dopamine spike happens at the end, right during the reward. But as the habit gets wired in, the dopamine actually stops firing at the reward and shifts backward to fire at the cue instead. Think about when your phone screen lights up from across the room. You get a spike of dopamine right then, before you've even picked the thing up. Your brain isn't reacting to the reward anymore, it's predicting it. That craving, that anticipation, is the biological force that literally pulls you into the routine on autopilot. But because this machinery is so incredibly efficient, we run into a major problem when we try to quit our bad habits. Here is the kicker. Your brain does not delete old habit loops. They are locked in like a chain. When you stop a habit, the brain simply stops using that specific pathway, but the path itself, it's still there. It's incredibly frustrating, and I think we all know that feeling. It is exactly why a habit you successfully broke 2 or even 5 years ago can instantly resurface the second you are put under extreme stress.
The basal ganglia just panics and defaults to the old familiar highway.
And we have to remember something really important about the brain. It is entirely morally neutral. Your basal ganglia doesn't sit up there judging your life choices. It has no concept of a good habit versus a bad habit. It only measures one single metric. Was this loop rewarding? Yes or no? The exact same biological machinery that builds a destructive nail-biting habit is literally identical to the system that builds a healthy habit, like read a book every night before bed. The machinery is exactly the same. The only difference is the data you feed it.
Which brings us to the ultimate biological hack. The old way of changing a habit is fighting the loop head-on, relying entirely on willpower and trying to suppress that intense craving. And, as we already know, that fails. The new way is completely different. Since you cannot delete a habit loop, you have to outsmart it. You keep the exact same cue, you make sure you get the exact same underlying reward, but you swap out the routine in the middle.
Let's look at a highly practical, totally relatable application of this. Let's say your bad habit is eating junk food every single afternoon. Step 1, you identify the cue. In this case, it's actually afternoon stress at work. You keep that cue. Step 3, the reward you're really craving isn't actually the sugar. It's a momentary distraction and a little physical relief from staring at your computer screen. You keep that reward. The real magic happens in step 2. Instead of reaching for that glazed donut that's calling your name, you insert a 5-minute walk outside. You are using the existing craving for relief to drive a brand new positive routine. So the crucial point is this: successful habit change is not and never was about having superhuman willpower. It is simply about working with your brain's natural wiring instead of constantly trying to fight against it. When you truly understand the cue, the routine, and the reward, you can re-engineer any behavior in your life. You get to stop judging yourself for lacking discipline, and you get to start acting like the architect of your own biology. Now, understanding this fundamental habit loop is incredibly powerful, for sure. But it also opens the door to a slightly darker reality. Because this exact same biological system, the cues, the dopamine predictions, the basal ganglia, is precisely what gets hijacked in cases of addiction. When substances or extreme behaviors supercharge this loop, certain triggers can feel biologically impossible to resist. We are going to unpack exactly how that hijacking happens in our next explainer. But for now, I want to leave you with a provocative question to think about today. What habit loop is running underneath your behavior right now? Think about the things you do on pure autopilot. Drop a comment below with your most stubborn habit. Tell me what it is, and I'll pick a few of them to help you identify the hidden cue and reward running underneath it. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.